Hello there, and welcome to the Empire of the Suns podcast. My name is Kellen Olson, joined as always by Kevin Zimmerman. Hi, Kevin.
Hey, we're on the floor today. Look at us.
Yeah, they're not taking it apart right now, which is great. I was worried about that. My anxiety of being in the way of others was creeping up as I walked out here
Watch
and then
them start ripping it up right now.
saw that we're still all good in the hood. Speaking of all good in the hood, Kev, the Suns, they won 123 to 109. Like game one, I think there's a lot to take away from this game, both good and bad. I think there was more good than bad, considering this team shot 59% and had 30 assists to 11 turnovers, considering that Devin Booker played what was... I was thinking about this. Okay, let's start there. Devin Booker, best postseason performances ever. You've got the 40-point triple-double. I think that's the best game I've ever seen him play. 40-point triple-double. I unfortunately was not in LA for Game 6 against the Lakers, but that was 45. And that was just like a first quarter of like, no, this is done. He had like 6 threes or whatever it was. The 40 pieces in the finals, I think that those, even in losses, hold a lot of weight for me. But after that, I'm struggling to think of another game. I think the first half of Game 2 against New Orleans was when he got going, but then he got hurt. So I think this is, it's not top 3, but it has a case for top 5. And my whole point in saying this and like drawing this out is that the fact that he can play that type of game, specifically in the second half, specifically in the last 2.5 quarters, when I don't want to be dramatic and narrative talking head guy, I'll put the hat on really quick and be like, the Suns season was on the line. But they were facing an 0-2 hole, dropping both at home at a certain point. They were down 13. Then they score on 10 of their last 11 possessions in the second quarter. They come out in the third quarter, and it's pretty much Booker as the point guard at that point, and he looked phenomenal doing it. I said this during our video thing, Kevin. There were certain possessions where he was slowing it down, but he was slowing it down and moving everyone around. It was less about him calling plays from what I could tell, and more of just like, you go here, you go there, and break. And it was like some Peyton Manning Omaha stuff that I was seeing out there. And he just willed them too with how hard he was playing. He played 45 minutes, was 14 of 22 from the field, 9 assists, 38 points, 3 turnovers. He was phenomenal, and if this team makes a deep run in the postseason, this will be a huge moment that we think of.
I don't know if we've seen the superstar take over in a playoff game from him like that. To your point of trying to rank them, which is difficult. Defensively, the Bucks games, even again when they lost, I think deserve to be up there. But the way the third quarter went, as far as dictating pace and dictating, like you said, it wasn't play calling so much as like you go over there, and then him attacking whatever he decided he wanted to attack on those plays, was just like it's the LeBron's just decided. It's Steph Curry's just decided now is his time. He's had enough. And that's where, like, you use the word superstar, I think. Because you and I both tweeted Kawhi Leonard's the best player in this series. And I think we were both talking about Kevin Durant has not lived up to it through the first 5 quarters of it.
Yeah.
And not even not lived up to it. I guess I shouldn't say that. He
wasn't
if playing as well as Kawhi Leonard.
Well, no, if you're going to rank who were the 3 best players in this series through 2 games, Kevin Durant's third on the list.
Yeah.
And we all expected him to be first because he's Kevin freaking Durant.
But, yeah, that's not a slight even.
No,
Because
I
both
don't say
played
it as
really
any
well.
disrespect because
Right,
Kawhi Leonard's playing out of his mind.
Yes.
And Devin Booker just had the best 2.5 quarters we've maybe seen from anyone in the postseason so far. I've been watching every single game because we have to cover some of them, obviously, but that was just an incredible performance by him in those 2.5 quarters. And I just keep focusing on the 2.5 quarters because of the first 1.5, which we'll touch on here in a bit. But I just wanted to start with the positives. I thought that it was – people are going to be mad, and I'm sure they were watching it, and it's a lot of like when it goes well, you don't say anything. When it goes wrong, you're just yelling about it. But it was cool when they were up 6 and they were like, no, we're still going to do Chris Paul and DeAndre in the 2-man game. We're still going to do it. And they scored 3 straight baskets, and it was a Chris midi. It was a DA laying through contact, which was good to see. And then it was a Chris midi again. And both of those middies were the type of ones where He's moving away from the basket. He's turning and fading at the same time, the type of high-degree difficulty shots that he makes in his sleep all the time. We haven't seen those enough consistently this year with his mid-range makes. And he said that he went back on Second Spectrum and watched all of his shots back against the Clippers this year because he was really hyper-focused on threes and shooting threes and taking threes, which was interesting to hear, of course, because he was still hesitating a bit to shoot threes. But with that being said, he noticed, like, oh, the drop's there. Like, they're just giving me the midi still. So he was able to get back to that a bit. He was 8 of 14 from the field, 8 assists, 1 turnover, much better performance from him. Crucially, Kevin, I don't know what the lineup data said, but you go through the plus minuses for the starters. Durant was plus 10, Craig plus 16, Ayton plus 15, Paul plus 14, Booker plus 15. I said this in our video thing. So they shoot 59% as a team, 30 assists. They shot 67.5% in the middle quarters. I can't remember if I said that part yet. I don't really think that this was an example, a shining example, a perfect example of the capabilities that this group has, particularly those top 4 guys. But it was part of that ceiling showing and just being like, hey, guess what? There's going to be a game in this series where they shoot 64% from the mid-range, where they shoot 16 of 22 on long twos, and you just have to live with it. And I'm sure you can back this up a bit when you were in the Clippers post-game stuff. I would guess that the sentiment there was like, hey, man, if they're going to make those and they're going to only attempt 24 threes after 19 on Sunday and they're just going to make those, like then so be it.
Yeah, I mean, the Clippers basically, Ty Lue just started off CP, Book, Kevin Durant. That's oversimplifying things, but he ran through, like, we were blitzing them, we were firing, we were, trapping them out of their zone, he even mentioned.
I hope someone does the kitchen sink outlook on a rewatch and sees how many defenses he threw.
Yeah.
Because it seemed like everything. Like, they did everything.
And his point was, even beyond Book, it was really, he said, second quarter and fourth quarter. And what happened in the second quarter? They had this situation where they had Zubac really paying attention to the ball handler, hit DA a couple times, I think maybe even 4 or 5 times in the mid-range for those jumpers. He hit a couple, and then they got out of that, and that's when the Suns started cooking in the mid-range with their perimeter guys. And again, in the fourth, which was Chris, he had 8 points out of his 16, 2 assists, I believe, and again, that one to DA, and they were running a lot of stuff with DA and Chris. And that's where the problem is for defending this Suns team, right? It's, okay, like, Kevin Durant's not, like, hot going. He still had 25. Devin Booker, like, did superstar stuff. But it, kind of to your point again, about the bench doesn't matter that much as far as scoring when you get even average games from DA and Chris Paul. And so that's where the Suns are right now, and I think, honestly, if you want to be negative, my negative is, are those guys playing too much? Because 44 minutes, 45 minutes, like, how sustainable is that?
Yeah, it's not. We'll get there. To stick here for a little bit longer, I have to keep repeating this point because I see so many conversation points about, again, I feel like I'm able to understand what people are thinking a lot. I feel like I have that type of skill as a human being on planet Earth with social anxiety be damned and all that stuff that I've got going on in this weird little noggin, but I cannot understand the fascination with one guy starting or this guy starting or this one guy getting minutes over this guy minutes and the crucial second part and acting like this is a reason why they are going to lose a basketball game. So with that being said, this is why. Like, if your 4 best players play like this, it doesn't matter if Damian Lee is getting the 2 minutes over Terrence Ross. It does not matter if TJ Warren is the 9th guy now instead of whoever it was. I don't even, was it Ross last game? Wainwright. It was Ish Wainwright in game 1. It doesn't matter that Bismack Biyombo got the nod at center against Orlando. It really does not. It just doesn't.
If they're not playing very many minutes, it really doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. And that was part of the issue, I guess, and we'll get to that in a bit. But
Torrey's played 2 really good games. Like, Monty, everyone should be praising Monty for making this crazy switch at this point because, like, would it, again, I'm guessing what Josh Okogie would do, but would it really matter that much is your point?
Did you notice there was a bucket where Kawhi scored, and I think it was Torrey Craig guarding him in the second quarter, and he said something. The man, a few words. said something.
He said something to the bench, maybe?
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
where I was like, uh-oh. What's going on here? But to go back to Torrey Craig, something Chris brought up is that the timeliness of his 5 threes. I'm looking right now. So 49-36, he hits that 3 when they're down 13. And then he hits another during that run to make it 51-44. And then I believe he hits 2 more in the third and then 1 more in the fourth, if I'm remembering this off the top of my head. The laptop is letting me down. This is so sad. Not live radio. 8:39 left. Hits another 3. That puts them up 10 at that point. And then I believe the other 2, nope, there was 1 more in the third quarter again to put them up 7. That's what Chris was talking about. Like, the Clippers were within 4. They miss a 3. Craig comes back. It's a huge 3 to put him up 7. Like, the timeliness of his shots were really important, and that is a huge Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder thing, where the timeliness of their plays, there would just be the 90-second Cam Johnson sequence where he would hit a 3 defensive rotations, box out, gravity, opening up a driving lane, and then it was a 5-point swing that was just not all him, but it felt like it was all him. And those 3s specifically for Torrey, I thought he did a really good job of battling against Kawhi. This is the one I'm more curious to watch back over the 2, because I don't know how clean Kawhi's looks were comparatively, but it just felt like a lot of his catches were easier in Game 1 than they were in Game 2. Felt like the Suns did a little bit of a better job on him specifically. And then we will get to it. This was a complex DeAndre game. They never aren't, I guess, with him.
Yeah.
But, man, when he was hitting middies in the second quarter, they needed offense somewhere. And it was just one of those sequences where his mid-range game was going, and then he was grabbing a couple of offensive rebounds. I think just, again, timeliness and when he grabs an offensive rebound and you can feel the amount of energy that it gives the team and the building and the whole thing, that speaks to why it's so important that he's doing that. It's not the fact that he grabs one and it leads to a positive result or whatever. It's just the energy that it brings, like the demoralizing feeling specifically the other way around when Westbrook kept grabbing one and grabbing one over and over again. He kept at it tonight. We'll get to him in a bit. But, man, I just thought the whole 5 as a whole, they were all really, really good.
Can we go back to DeAndre for a second?
Sure.
I think the first quarter was bad by the whole team. And a lot of it, and we talked about this in teams during the game, like KD and DeAndre, and I saw this a little bit in the regular season, but it's popped up both games where...
Okay, we're getting to negatives. Now, I was trying to hold you back from negatives here, you pessimistic
I'm going to go to
positives
just to focus on DeAndre, but there are negatives. People
Orlando,
were hot.
Everyone's always known that about me. Go ahead.
People were hot about DeAndre.
Yeah.
And, he was not rotating well. Like, they would do initial rotations, but on scramble plays, offensive rebounds in that first quarter especially, like, he and KD were, like, standing next to each other too much, like, not knowing where to go, that kind of thing. Other guys were doing that, too, on the Suns. But people were just, like, ripping, and it's like, he's their only offense right now early in that first half. And I thought his activity was important in drawing 2 fouls. One, Kawhi, I believe it was first foul, and he basically boxed out Kawhi because they had that mismatch from the start of the possession.
This game was even more physical than the last one. It was.
Yeah.
There was a KD post up where Nick Batum gave him a shoulder bump that would have knocked me into the 7th row back, way back there.
Yeah. But DA drove a foul.
Yeah.
DA switched off on Westbrook and got an offensive foul called, and so those couple things happened in the first quarter. I was like, oh, he's engaged. And then you go look, what are the rebounding totals? He had 13, Zubac had 5. Are Clippers fans equally oh, he's just trash. He's just trash. Maybe. But I don't know. To me, he played a good game, and he wasn't deficient in just the unraveling type of DA games. And he wasn't even in game 1. So I think that's unfair. They have problems to work out, and they worked them out.
We'll get there. We'll get there. Well, we'll get there right now. Okay. You and I have both been not hesitant, but just open-minded with the coaching staff, and in particular handing them criticism this early after one game.
Mm-hmm.
because I think it's a really long process and there's so much that can just go into one game. But I think that and this really goes into how, again, some people, basketball in their head is this one guy starting or not starting, this one guy not coming off the bench or coming off the bench as the difference in a game. Like that's how some people think about the sport, and that's fine. It's all subjective, that's fine. But I think that for me, a big thing with coaching staffs in particular, and I say staffs because it's not just Monty, it's his whole group, you have to be able to take things that went wrong one night and then the next night not make them go away, but improve on them. And if you're able to improve on them, I think that means you're getting through to your group, and that means that what you are showing your guys and teaching your guys, because look, you want to guess that they talked about offensive rebounding for the last 2 days? You want to guess that they talked about getting up threes more? Yeah. Of course they did. But you have to be able, as a coach, to get your guys to execute those scenarios that you're trying to put them in more frequently. And I just did not see that transition here, Kevin. This is close enough to what I talked about last podcast, where there was an outcome where even if the Suns win, I would be more concerned about this series than I was before. And I'm there now. I'm still going to stick with Suns in 5, I guess, but I'm more concerned now that this could go 6 or even 7, just based on the way the Suns were not able to get up threes at a certain point in the early second quarter before Booker went supernova. They had 7 compared to the 16 attempts for the Clippers. The Clippers at one point had 8 3-pointers made, and the Suns had 7 attempted. The offensive rebounding, Clippers had 12 tonight compared to 15 in Game 1. Great. They had 21 second-chance points compared to 12, and that's PTSD for Suns fans back to the Milwaukee series. The New Orleans series has been a problem forever. You've got another 7-footer now, and it's still an issue. And then the rotation, it is not sustainable to play Devin Booker and Kevin Durant 45 minutes a game. I don't know how else to describe it. It's just not going to work for an entire postseason. Can it work for this little moment where, again, to use a similar metaphor that I did for the first game, like punching through the door over and over again, and then eventually the door doesn't exist and there's a gap there. Hopefully, for their sake, that is what has happened, and they have found their style of play again and rejuvenated it a bit, because if they haven't, you cannot play these guys, especially Durant, 45 minutes a game. Like, Booker is in, hopefully everyone understanding, because I've said this a lot on this podcast. I think a couple of times I've received replies being like, like he gets tired and stuff, but it's like, that guy is in insane shape. And I just think he doesn't get put in opportunities or put himself in opportunities because he saves it for when he really needs it. Like when he was doing the two-way thing on Middleton in the finals and so on and so forth. In this game, he really did it. But I think the main thing to focus on with the 45 minutes thing is the fact that this seemed like it was planned for the most part, Kevin, because we come out of the first quarter and it's like, oh, okay, Durant has now played the whole first quarter with Booker. That's already one change. And then they're coming out and I'm like, okay, who's going to be the ninth guy? It's TJ Warren. Cool. Booker's coming back out on the court. He's staying in and playing, and that's the type of that's just too much. And then you look at the rotation behind that, you get a little bit of changes here and there, but they basically – Wainwright logged him in. I don't even know when that happened. Did that happen like the last minute of the game?
I think.
TJ Warren played 2. Damian Lee played 3, and Damian Lee was clearly not planned to be in the rotation. Like, he just got thrown out there because they felt like they needed shooting. I don't know what exactly. Okogie, Biyombo, and Shamet all played well, but an 8-man rotation is not enough unless you play those guys 20+, and that's the problem there. Because, again, Chris Paul at 38, by the way. Like, that's a lower number, but 38 and 39. So all of those problems go into the fact that Durant and Booker just had to play these crazy minutes because other things weren't clicking into place that should be more easily. Because you can watch some game ones of a series. Like, remember when I bring this up all the time. Remember the Denver series where we were like, dude, I don't know what Denver's going to do.
Yeah.
Like, we were one game into the series, we were watching, and I was like, I don't think what are they going to do?
Yeah.
But we watched this loss against the Clippers, and we're like, oh, they can clean up this, and this. And they didn't really clean it up that much. They just got white hot offensively. So now I don't know, again, panic, concern, anything like that. Not really. I just think that this is going to be the third straight series where there is some level of the opponent having their number, and it is going to be a absolute grind again.
Okay. I agree with you. It is a 4-5 series, which in theory means it's supposed to be this competitive.
Nah, don't do that. They don't have Paul George.
They match up well.
They sure do.
Some of the other series are going poorly also. So I'm just saying this in the big picture of the NBA. If the Suns do get out of this is looking way ahead, but they will have learned a lot from this series.
Yeah, oh
and
yeah.
I think that's the important part. Like, even if you're like championship or bust, you might as well be like, okay, they're going to figure out stuff in this series. They're going to be tested. I would be surprised if, honestly, there are a lot of scenarios where they could hit the next team, and the next two series are going to be a lot easier than this one, just because of who this team is. Because Kawhi Leonard looked like superstar Kawhi Leonard, because the coach is good, because they have a good matchup against the Suns. So, I mean, I guess I'm saying this to say don't add worry, but it's legit a competitive series,
Well,
and don't expect them to just like roll over.
You
the
needed
Clippers
to
to
say
roll
that
over.
because my point is that I did not expect this to be a competitive series. I
No.
did not imagine a scenario where I left tonight and thought, man, this is going to be a tough 6 or it's going to go 7. I
No.
think that's where we're headed.
Yeah.
I really do think that's where we're headed now, just with what the Clippers are able to achieve as a team with their consistent tweaks and adjustments. And Matt Moore made a really good point where we both kind of at the same time were like, yeah, Booker's figured this out. Like what the Clippers are doing defensively, he has figured it out. And then he quote tweeted and said, this is the first wave. There's going to be plenty more of adjustments and tweaks that the Clippers throw in. They did empty the kitchen sink a bit, but with that being said, there's plenty more coming from what they're going to try and do.
Here's the thing, though, and why I think this is interesting from the Clippers' perspective, because I don't know that they have to change a whole lot, right? Like, do you feel like the Suns are in a groove just because Devin Booker had to go crazy in a quarter? I don't know that the Clippers necessarily need to do anything crazy different. Now, I think they're going to say, this did work a little better, let's do more of that. And I don't know if that's good or bad if you're the Suns, because if they come out and they have the same game plan, because the first 2 games went kind of the same, and it was just like, oh, fourth quarter execution, clean that up. The team that cleaned it up won the game. And so I'm going to be super curious if we see anything completely different, whether that's rotations, defensive schemes. I don't think so. I think they're just going to keep doing different things, maybe in different orders. They seem confident is what I'm trying to get at, and I think that's justified.
Can I sprinkle in some positives here before we get to a couple more negatives and wrap this thing up? For goodness sake. I love the fact, and Suns fans, specifically our friends Mike Vigil and Sam Cooper, multiple-time guests on this show, when you had to do wedding stuff or other baby stuff or other
baby stuff,
things that stuff to occupy your time in your personal life, which you are obligated to as a human being.
Thank you.
Working for a corporation. Are we a corporation? Is that being dramatic?
A company.
They were begging to the basketball gods for the Suns to hedge or trap or something. They were just like, please. You have an incredibly mobile 7-footer. Guess what? There's another one back there. Please trap or hedge. Please do something. And guess what? They did. They did on Kawhi Leonard. A little bit.
A little.
They didn't do it enough. They need to do way more of it. Booker started helping. I think this is the watch back brain part, but it seemed like from the smart sources on Twitter that I rely on to say this stuff when I'm not noticing it while it's happening, that they were helping off of Westbrook even more in a more productive way in the second half. Like they adjusted their coverages on him a little bit. And that's the part where the things that we're talking about, you hear about like helping off of Westbrook, helping off of Zubac. Those are aggressive game plans.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like it's aggressive because you're just helping off of a dude, but it's aggressive.
It's like, he's a 33% three-point shooter. It's like, teams still don't like to do that.
They need to be far more of the aggressor, not in the defensive game plan area, because no one's ever going to beat the Clippers with that because of how much they do and how much they're tweaking and how aggressive they get. But they need to not even sprinkle in, they need to thoroughly mix in aggressive defensive coverages. And Kevin, they're not used to doing them because they haven't been with this group that much, but now is the time to learn. Now's the time to get it together, and now's the time when Kawhi Leonard is like, I did that finals thing where I was like the best player by far on a finals team. What if I just do it again? Like that's what he was looking like through 5 quarters. Trap that man, hedge that man, double that man. And they started to do it more. It cooled him off just enough in the middle quarters, and Russell Westbrook cooled off enough in the middle quarters to match with that. Other positives, let me ask you this. I believe we're at house money with Russell Westbrook now. I think if you would have gone to the series and said over under 1.5 great games from Russell Westbrook, you would have said over. Do you agree he was great tonight? I thought he was great tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's 2
Same defensive
great
intensity.
games already.
Still has brain farts.
House money.
But
do you think that it's a must-win for the Clippers when he's great? I would argue. I wouldn't say definitively, but I would argue.
I mean, like, here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Bones Highland, Norm Powell, they haven't really just gotten let loose, which is
other
the good positive.
I was going to bring up there. You read my mind. All this noise I heard, all this flapping in my ear about this depth that the Clippers have. No shots intended.
They
no
play
offense.
more, so they score more points.
Guess
than
who was the
Suns
third
bench,
leading
but-
scorer for them?
Ooh,
It was Eric Gordon and Norman Powell.
okay.
They had 12 points.
Yeah.
12. I heard all this depth talk, all of it. I can't say depth right, but
They have
doesn't
more,
mean I don't hear it.
Here's the thing. They have more depth than the Suns in Monty's head. That's the weird thing, is like Monty does not trust them, obviously.
Well, I think they do, but to your point,
that's a bad update. It sounds like he's not ready. Can't do certain movements, by the way, but
yeah,
that's a factor.
Yeah.
If you just throw him in there and he's like half 75% speed campaign,
yeah, they need that. In this
that
series specifically, they need that. And hey, if you throw him out there for 5 minutes and it doesn't look great, you don't have to turn to it in the second half. Guess who's getting a rest though during that time? Holy smokes!
Yeah.
They're gonna need that.
yeah.
Really, point that I harped on here: assist to turnover ratio for this Clippers basketball team. They had 17 assists and 15 turnovers tonight.
Ooh.
They were 26 in assist to turnover ratio this season. I know a lot of switching, but it didn't really go up or down drastically with Westbrook. That was part of my Westbrook is the X factor thing because he's the secondary playmaker guy or the lead playmaker guy. Kawhi was really good as a playmaker tonight, I thought, again, relative to my expectations. Like, I just thought he was better than I expected.
5 assists in the first quarter, all went for threes, but I will say a lot of those, I believe, were like offensive rebounds, scramble situations, just made the easy pass, and then I'll be positive again.
How many defensive rebounds do you think Zubac had tonight?
3.
2.
Okay.
I got to go look and see where that happened and why. But he had 4 on the offensive glass and 2 on the defensive glass. That speaks to some level of success because they're just keeping him away from the basket and dragging him out a bit more consistently. Because remember, they were kind of doing that with the Torrey Craig drops and things like that, right? But I think through triggering some of the Durant double teams, maybe I'm not really sure. All of this is kind of in a way previewing Game 3, but I think that some of those issues, I think that Streaker had a really good point. Meme God. You just see a Streaker fire tweet and you just know what's coming. Like, he had the one with DeAndre DeRozan, and I was like, this is going to do numbers, and it sure did. He had a very astute point, which was he feels like this is the problems right now with the Suns and what they're dealing with. It's more systemic, and that's just, again, pointing towards the coaching staff and stuff. And for me, looking towards Game 3, I told you when we were doing the video over there 2 hours ago that this was more – I was more fascinated by Game 3 by far heading into it now compared to if I were to combine Game 1 and Game 2, I would say Game 3 I'm the most fascinated because I think that there's a huge point to be made for their style of play, how they dictate things, to prove that sentiment wrong because I think it's been right through 2 games. That you can look at this and say after the way the Pelican series went, after I bring this point up all the time, after Game 3 I'm sitting in the hotel room and you're like, man, that's just not that team. I don't know what's going on here, but it's not happening in the playoffs, man. And then he said that was Streaker's point, is that this is a thing that happens in the postseason. Like when they turn the corner, and I had people replying to my 8 games tweet, and like some people's opinions I respect. One of them, like a longtime commenter on Brad's Side of the Sun from eons ago, and he just said, this is just like a bad narrative. Like this is just incorrect because this keeps happening in the playoffs, and it just shows how flawed they are as a team. We're not going that far, obviously, but Game 3, I think, will show definitively with 3-game sample size how much juice there is to squeeze there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the building blocks are there, but it just doesn't click and fire. I thought today it did a little bit, but I don't know. It just, if you ask the question, do you know what their offense is? I would say it's a jumble of random things thrown together, and they know what works, and they're good at that, but they don't have like an offense.
You know what might be a problem?
What?
their best point guard isn't their point guard anymore.
Yeah.
Might be a problem.
He can be it for 2 minutes in the fourth quarter and be really good and like he used to, but that's...
Can't believe I'm saying that out loud. Can't believe it, but it might be true. I'm not willing to say it's completely
this
true,
is what
but
I was
it might
going
be.
to say earlier.
Go for it, King.
Igor
is yours.
Kokovshkov
Shout
died
out
for
Igor.
this.
His sins.
He put point book. I know it wasn't his decision. He probably would have liked to have a point guard that year, but he was like the one who first said, you know what? We're not going to win many games. You go run point guard. You go learn.
Run those ball
you
screens.
do it. I think
Learn that weak side rotation,
I believe
friend.
in you. He also believed in DeAndre and should set screens and do big stuff.
You should.
What? He was here today, by the way.
Serginho Dest was here. Odell Beckham Jr. was here.
Tyler Eulis was here.
John Bloom, spotting it a mile away. Apparently USMNT is like training here. What were you saying?
Book learned how to play point guard.
Sure
He's
did.
learned for
Shout
quite
out
a few
Igor.
years now, and it looks really good.
So now, on that point, and to kind of close things out, I wonder if there is a secondary, the desperation of playing him and Durant mid-40s minutes is, do you just have Devin Booker run the offense now? Like, is that the point we're at now with Chris, where Devin is primarily running things and Chris is, I want to say this. Chris, like all this talk about off-ball role, he's definitely playing off the ball the most he has in his career, don't get me wrong. He's still bringing the ball up 90% of the time. Like, he's still running the action 90% of the time.
Yeah.
I wonder if you just do a 50-50 split at this point. Like, you just get to that kind of level at least, that kind of breakdown at least. Maybe a 45-45-10 with a little campaign, dare I say.
The combo of Book running it with his minutes bothers me. If he was playing 36, 38 even, and he split it, it's like fine. Or if you're like just initiating offense and he's getting off the ball, right? I have a problem with playing that many minutes and doing, like, just lifting everything in all of those minutes. And that's where the problem is, and that's where you get worried. Because that's a lot of work. He was doing Steve Nash dribble under the hoop stuff and doing a great job at it, but at some point, other people have to help a little bit.
One more thing before we go to
Yep.
preview Game 3. I'm a big holding the standard to the person. There's a reason why I hesitated on that point guard move, because he is the point god, and I hold that respect to him and hold that standard of his play there. There's a reason we talk about DeAndre, and we hold him to the standard. One negative we did not really get to, by the way, rim protection. I got to go watch that back, but the defensive rotations, whatever it was, whether it was the point of attack stuff or the back line, there were just, I know for a fact there were a lot of possessions where DeAndre just wasn't rotating over to cover the rim. I don't know if it was his fault. I don't know if it was someone else's fault, but Kevin wasn't doing it either. And that was some of the thing. Like, Durant's a really good defensive player and not prone to mistakes, but he's making mistakes pretty consistently here over 2 games on rotations. And again, new guy, learning the system.
That seems to be, when it's rotations, it probably is the new guy thing, yeah.
The standard, it's time for us to see Kevin Durant now. It's 2 games where he's been pretty good. Again, standard, the hype that was justified in his arrival here, the way in which we talk about him and the way I echo Patrick Beverley's, he's Kevin freaking Durant. Mm-hmm. We haven't really had many it's Kevin freaking Durant moments yet through 2 games. Certainly with the shot making, sure. But the 17 points in the second quarter was about the closest that we got in game 1. But that's about it. So I'm just saying be on the lookout for that, because it's coming.
Yeah.
He's Kevin freaking Durant, like I said. It's coming. So I think that's part of another positive for Phoenix, is that they can hold out on that and say, like, we've gotten 2 pretty good performances from Kevin Durant, but if we're talking about the average Kevin Durant postseason performance, these are both under. They're both below average to his incredibly high standard, but that's the cool thing about having 2 superstars, is that one guy can do that thing sometimes when the other one is still assimilating.
If we want to boil down through 2 games, we can start there and say that superstar has not done the superstar thing yet, but we've already had 2 others do it. So that's why this is a series. Lots of superstars. Could have been more if Paul George was healthy.
Who knows? Well, now it's interesting because when I heard that report, I was like, oh, series going 5 games now. Is he going to do the Anthony Davis thing in Game 7 if we get to a Game 7? I don't know. We'll see. It's 12:50 a.m. Should we all go home and go sleep? What say you, Jeremy? You're emphatically nodding. You want to communicate?
Yes.
All right, there you go. What about you, bud?
Probably watch Mandalorian and then.
How's the entry when the child is asleep? Do you just like slowly creak
Oh
in?
no, he's good.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah.
So you're going to watch Mando, I'm going to watch Ted Lasso, and we're all just going to be all very happy?
Yeah.
That's cool. I have a 7:30 a.m. flight, not in 6 hours, thank God. Flying out on Thursday morning. Super excited to get to LA when everything isn't closed down. It was so weird being there.
Oh,
So I would
yeah.
just look up restaurants and they'd be closed down because of the whole pandemic thing. There was construction everywhere. It was a weird time. So we'll be back there now for what'll be Vince Goodwill from Yahoo had a funny thing with me because he said like, oh yeah, I was like asking if it would be in LA. He'd be like, yeah, and I'll be like, ooh, that's gonna be fun. A lot of great basketball. And he was like, long days. I was like, yeah, that's true because I think he said there's a 12:30 Saturday game. That's the game 4 for the Suns, and then the Lakers play at 7 that night. So some national writers are going to be putting in quite the jam.
No time for Ted Lasso for those guys.
No Survivor like I'll be watching tomorrow night. D-backs won. Jeremy, did anyone file a complaint with the Cardinals while we were recording? What's up? How are they doing?
No, we're 5 hours without a complaint.
5 hours.
Great,
Okay.
great.
Doing great here.
Quarterback smoke screens going on. Schefter's putting out some nonsense about quarterbacks aren't going to go. The Houston Texans just aren't going to take a quarterback, apparently. I don't buy it.
They might
for a
not
second.
do that, actually. It's
Not
the
for a second.
Texans. I don't know.
Don't say that. Don't do that to me.
They don't have Jeff Driscoll on the free agent market anymore,
need
though.
something.
So
Kevin Durant rocking a D-backs hat. Bless him. Said he knows about the Corbin Carroll Seattle roots. Really cool story. If you don't know, Corbin Carroll, 22-year-old rookie in the majors. Fastest player in the league now. He is going to be a future superstar. He pretty much, if you had to say who's the future face of the franchise, because the D-backs don't have one right now, it's definitely going to be him. He's awesome. Kevin Durant was at a D-backs game a couple days ago rocking a Corbin Carroll jersey. Corbin Carroll grew up in Seattle, and for that 1 year Kevin Durant was a Seattle Supersonic, he went and saw Kevin Durant when he was 7 years old. And Kevin Durant's response made me feel old. Amen, brother. Amen. All right, everyone. We'll be back for Game 3. I'm looking at the camera now for some reason. I don't know. I like the
are we going to use this?
stand-up mode. I like this setup, Jeremy. Good
Yeah,
job.
thank you.
The chairs and the thing. Shout out to you. Just you knew it was going to be like an
Hanging out
hour
with
of
us.
us writing and just waiting to record this. And you're like, yeah, man, for the content. Jeremy's just down for the content. That's the thing
We
about
thank
Jeremy
you,
that you
yeah.
got to realize is that man is down for the content. And I know he's going to clip this and use this for Twitter now because he's down for the content. Now he wants to say something, which is like, I'm messing with you. What's up?
I'm content with the content that we got.
Oh,
I would hope so. Man, it was a
the
long night.
pun machine's still churning in your head at this late hour. All right.
What do you think about this Lilo and Stitch remake? I'm just kidding. All right, everyone. See you later.